this is a screencast on week 12 readings. William Collins this week. I wanted to take just a second. William Collins is widely regarded as one of the most skilled 18th century lyric poets, and he falls within the neoclassical period, which was right there at the tail end of the Restoration, moving into the 18th century writing that we've just kind of brushed through this time period, and I kind of selected the ones that I really kind of like a lot, that I wanted to use. And so, here we are in this time period. So the neoclassical period is, it was kind of a revival of the ancient Greek texts in terms of structure and form, rationalism, rational thought, which was driven by learning and knowledge and inspiration, and it was an outcome of intellect rather than fancy and imagination. And so you have a lot of allusions to classical Greek writings, the poets of the time period and the writers of the time period. And so, this time period that we're in right now in British Lit, it falls in that neoclassical period. However, in William Collins and also in Thomas Gray, who we're going to look at the next week, your scholars really find the beginnings of Romanticism, which is where we're going to roll into at the first part of 204, the second part of British Lit, the Romantic period. And the Romantic period was, widely classified by a love of nature and, a celebration of nature and its and kind of getting back to nature. The focus on the individual and spirituality. There's going to be a lot of emphasis on the imagination and fancy. And you're also going to have a celebration of isolation and solitude and melancholy, like a sadness that kind of comes along with solitude and being on your own and what you can gain from that experience. And so when we take a look here at these two poems by William Collins, we're going to see that while they, do have some characteristics that match up with that neoclassical, they're more heavily rooted in that Romantic period ideal. So let's take a look at the two poems that we're going to have for this week. We'll start with How Sleep the Brave who sink to rest by all their country's wishes blessed. When spring with dewy fingers cold returns to deck their hallowed mold, she there shall dress a sweeter sod than fancy's feet have ever trod. By fairy hands their knell is rung, by forms unseen their dirge is sung. Their honor comes a pilgrim gray to bless the turf that wraps their clay, and freedom shall a while repair to dwell a weeping hermit there. A very simple poem here by Collins, an ode to the ultimate sacrifice of soldiers who gave their lives for England. In that first stanza there, we have these brave men that have been laid to rest. How sleep the brave who sink to rest by all their country's wishes blessed. So these brave men have been laid to rest with all their country's blessings for their sacrifice. And he articulates how nature honors these soldiers. He says, when spring personified there with dewy fingers cold returns to deck their hallowed mold and dresses them with a sweeter sod than fancy's feet have ever trod. So nature takes over and also pays tribute and honor to these fallen soldiers, these fallen men. She decks their dresses them with with sweeter grass than anyone has ever seen, than fancy's feet have ever trod. She decks their hallowed mold, and it kind of brings the idea of spring with the flowers over the graves and paying honor where nature is honoring these brave soldiers. In the second hand, we have that flight of fancy, that imagination that kind of plays into hand here. By fairy hands, their knell is rung. So fairies are ringing bells, and forms unseen, those angels, are singing dirges or funeral songs, laments for the dead. And their graves are blessed with honor and freedom. So honor personified there, capital H, honor comes, a pilgrim grave to bless the turf that wraps their clay. So honor comes to rest there and blesses the graves. And freedom dwells there. He stays a while, the weeping hermit of freedom, who is dwelling there to pay homage to their selfless mission to make their country free, and they didn't live to get to see it to fruition. So very simple there, just about the sacrifice and how sleep the brave, essentially. But we see a lot of those romantic elements. We see that flight of fancy or the imagination you have there with the fairies and the angels that are coming to rest, and how nature pays honor and respect to this fallen dead, the restorative power of nature, how it takes over and pays tribute to them as well. Okay, let's take a look then at Ode to Evening. An ode is a long lyric poem beginning with an invocation or address, and this is where we see it fall into that neoclassical period. Here, the speaker is addressing Eve, the goddess who represents the evening. It's very likely that he is meaning the Greek goddess of evening, Hesperides, but here he calls her Eve. Invoking that goddess would have been very characteristic of classicism here. And he's just basically presenting a beautiful picture, very full of very vivid imagery here of a quiet evening and the beauty in that, and that this woman, this goddess of the evening, is responsible for all these things. In lines 1 through 8, he begins by kind of paying homage, I guess, to the pastorals of the Renaissance. He kind of brings to mind a shepherd tending its flock in nature, playing on an oaten flute, maybe at the end of the day in the fields. And the day is ending here, and night is arriving quickly, and Collins, the speaker, asks permission from the spirit of Eve to compose something else, this ode to the evening that he is composing. And he hopes that this ode will soothe her modest ear, be pleasing to her, with a calm like her silent solemn springs at her dying gales. And so, during the day where the water is making more noise and the wind is blowing, now it's nighttime and everything has gone quiet and solemn and calm, right? The gales are dying down, and there's quiet water, gentle breezes. The bright-haired sun is going to bed. He sits in yon western tent, and the sky has taken on an ethereal or an otherworldly haze about it. So the air is hushed, except for, it's quiet, except for the sounds of the small noises of small creatures. So you have the weak-eyed bat that's shrieking quietly as it flits by in the wind, or the beetle who is humming the sun's path to his home to rest. The sun, the beetle, and the bat, still not noisy, very calm, very quiet, very magical kind of situation here. So then in lines 15 through 20, he asks Eve, the maid, to teach him some softened strain for his ode so that his song or his musing does not jar the stillness of this evening, of this darkening veil. He doesn't want to be too loud because he doesn't want to disrupt the peace. He wants to return her genial love or please her in some way. He doesn't want to be too loud. He wants to please her, and he wants her to teach him how to do that, a softened strain, so that he can do that without disrupting the magic of the evening. And he kind of deepens that imagery here in lines 21 through 28. For the folding star, that sun is the evening star. Is coming out, and the moon is maybe beginning to rise, and the paley circlet, that haze that kind of circles the moon, is coming up and signaling the fragrant hours of the evening. And this situation causes all the elves and the fairies who've been asleep during the day to wake up and start their magic hours, right? They begin their preparations to the evening goddess and start bringing all the night images to life, and then prepare her shadowy car that she will be in there for the evening. And then in lines 29 through 40, he says, then lead calm votress. A votress is kind of an invocation to religion. A votress is a nun who's dedicated her life to her faith. Kind of oddly here, the comparison of the goddess of evening has devoted herself to her craft and her task there. He wants him to lead him. He wants her to lead him to a place where he can enjoy this calm beauty of the evening, perhaps alone on a heath, or maybe in a secluded hut where he can and enjoy this and reflect upon this evening. However, the chill, blustering winds and the driving rain forbid his feet from venturing outside. So there, from the mountainside, in that small hut, be mind the hut, that from the mountainside, he can view this magical evening, the wilds, the swelling floods, the hamlets brown, the dim discovered spires. He can hear the toll of the spire bell, or the church bell, which marks the day's end. And and all this can happen as Eve, as dewy fingers are drawing the dusky veil over the land, the hush and the magic, kind of making it complete. Kind of switches gears in lines 41 through 52. He's talking about the seasonal changes and specifically how those impact the evening. He talks about spring and her showers, and summer where the days are longer and there's less evening to fill up with the magic hour. And then sallow autumn is filling her lap with leaves as the seasons are changing and things are starting to die off. And then winter, which is the longest time of evening, where the weather turns colder and wreaks havoc on the evening because it's cold outside. It says, through the troublous air frights thy shrinking train and rudely rends thy robes. But regardless of the season, sure to be found under the sylvan shed, or the cover of the deepest woods, are the personified friends of the evening: fancy, friendship, science, and rose-lipped health, that own her gentlest influence and sing a song or a hymn dedicated to her there, which is Collins's own ode to the evening. And so we're seeing again those characteristics of romanticism, the restorative powers of nature, and the solitude, that he can witness all of these magical things happening. You see the imagination and the flights of fancy, where you have the elves and the fairies that are coming out at night to help to cast this spell over the land, to make the evening what it is. And so we can see in this poem too that he's moved away from that whole idea of learning and knowledge and inspiration, and more about nature and fancy and imagination, and that kind of thing there. So definitely more in the Romantic period.